Welcome into the Off-Brand Avalanche podcast. Post loss to Dallas, pretty frustrating loss. I mean, like I was saying, when you lose the game to Arizona, when you completely outplayed them, it's really easy to say we're the better team. We're going to bounce back fine. In today's game, we were outplayed. Dallas looked better than we did. Um, Basically, in all three periods, they beat us. Were you guys on the same page on that? Did you think any differently?
Yeah,
100%. 100%.
I'm on the same page there, and yeah, we touched on how frustrating that was during the watch party.
I mean,
Yeah.
this might have been one of the most frustrating games I've being a diehard Avs fan, ever seen them play. Um, for multiple reasons. I mean, the Avs are so much more talented than the Stars. They don't have Ben Bishop in net, and that's been their driving force all season, especially in the season series against the Avalanche. I'm pretty sure all four games in which the Stars won in the regular season, Ben Bishop was the number one star. And Kudobin is in, and no knock on Kudobin. He's a fantastic second. He's a fantastic second goalie. There's nothing else to it. But at the same time, that's really not an excuse for just playing the way that we did. The boys just did not show up to play tonight, and honestly, I kind of feel like it's a bit of a cockiness type of thing. I feel like not only did the national media hype them up so much, not only did we hype them up so much, but I feel like they were kind of hyping themselves up so much.
Yeah, I could see that. That's a point that I haven't thought about before. From playing sports back in my days, when you go in as the big, favorite, sometimes you get that cockiness, and then you lose the game. But also through that playing experience, it's good for the boys to have a little bit of adversity. Yeah, I think in the end it's just going to be good for them for sure. But I guess I kind of wanted to touch on this Jared Bednar quote post game and get you guys' thoughts on that, if that's okay.
All right.
Oh yeah.
So Jared Bednar post game, couple of very interesting points he made. I really want to start on goaltending with Grubauer because it's probably the most number one pressing issue right now. Per Jared Bednar, not expecting to see Grubauer at practice tomorrow. Doesn't know if he'll be out long term, but it's a tweak of his previous injury, which is, quote, bad news.
Yes, I saw that same quote, which is not good. So
yes,
it looks like Frankie's going to be our guy moving forward. I think we could probably touch on that a little bit more. I know there's some other Bednar quotes, Zach. I'm like, is it okay if I just say that he was?
Yeah.
He said, well, half of our team actually showed up tonight, which is completely true. That is entirely what we saw the entire game. It's pathetic, the fact that the first line was the only line that was actually ripping tonight. And really the entire bottom nine was like invisible to me. And honestly,
Exactly.
I think if it wasn't for McKinnon on that top line, they might have been a little bit invisible as well. McKinnon was incredible.
Played okay, and I thought that Rantanen played okay. McKinnon was absolutely incredible. We talk about how well Sakic has built this team, and 2 years ago we watched the Avalanche, and they were a one-line team. They lived and died by the three-headed monster, and get all the credit in the world to Sakic. That's no longer the team we are in general, but that is the team we were today, and.
Yep.
They tried to put the team on their backs. Landeskog made a really nice play on that goal. That was one of my favorites. Just smart veteran play to make, and McKinnon with a couple goals of his own. So that line to me was clicking. I wouldn't say that Rantanen and Landeskog had great games. I wouldn't say they had bad games either. I think they were good, but I mean it wasn't good enough to win. And I have a hard time thinking Tyson Jost really is the only other guy on the offensive side of the puck that I can think of that I would legitimately say had a good game.
And the problem is if we're evaluating the defense, I'd say Makar had a pretty okay. Like he was driving play, but was fumbling the puck all over the place. And really, outside of Makar, Gerard maybe like you can't be too harsh with him, but he wasn't really doing anything. He was a little bit invisible to me, which is in some instances okay. Like if you're invisible out there, it means you're just not really like making mistakes, but you're also not driving play. But the rest of the defense,
I mean, EJ was hurt, so you give him a
yes,
break there. Ian Cole, I didn't think was terrible, but he took some boneheaded risks at times in the game where it wasn't necessarily necessary. So necessarily necessary, I like that. But he taking some shots from the point after stepping up into the shin guards and nearly
yeah,
generating odd man rushes. Nothing that really bit him in the ass at the end of the day, but you'd like to see more out of him. But at the end, like that's a bottom pairing guy. It was really when we're talking about defenders that didn't play well, we're talking about Ryan Graves and Nikita Zadorov. Graves in particular. Zadorov, to me, Zadorov was all right outside of the one absolutely boneheaded
yeah.
half pinch on the wall that allowed a goal.
And no back check, no effort on that play. And these
Yeah.
we were talking about on the live stream. These are the plays that gets Zadorov literally out of the lineup on particular times, especially in the regular season. And it's plays like these that it's like it might be a little bit deserved if we're being honest. It's like, come on, Z. At least make a little bit of an effort. Show the fans that you have like some heart to get back on that play that you just got burned on. Um, but Graves, this was easily, without a doubt, 100% the worst game I've seen him play in an Avalanche sweater, which
Absolutely.
is very sad to me because Graves was one of the main reasons that the Avs were in the position that they were this season. He fought his way into the lineup at the beginning of the season, and really there was no choice other than having him in the lineup for the rest of the season. There's a reason he led the NHL in plus minus. But then with this game, it's like, oh, you can kind of see like why he was having a little bit of a hard time cracking an NHL lineup before this season.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, it's just the foot speed really showed up, particularly on that third goal. Ryan Graves was the point man, let it get by. I mean, this is a time in the game where the Avs are, I believe, 2-1 now. They're generating pressure. They look like they're about to tie the game. And
yep.
Ryan Graves does not have the foot speed to catch the guy who chips the puck out of the zone. When he does pack check, he doesn't have enough speed to catch up, so he just kind of takes a swing with the stick. It does nothing. Jamie Benn sends it across to Radulov, who, to be fair, Sam Girard should have had covered, and Radulov just puts the puck in the net. So, I mean, that was just an absolute defensive breakdown for both of them, Ryan Graves and Sam Girard.
Right.
And it was, I mean, that was the theme on all the goals. I don't think Dallas did play well, but there weren't so many goals that they earned as much as Colorado made some boneheaded mistakes. And credit to them, a good team capitalizes on those mistakes, and that's what Dallas was today. They were a good team.
Yeah, and no doubt Gravy and Z played just absolutely awful today. But I want to touch a little bit also on the team defense. Just wasn't there. The back checking from the forwards wasn't there, and that's what we're going to need against the Stars for sure. I feel like Arizona was a faster team, and we were able to get back on them. It's just good that we had our worst game of the playoffs so far in Game 1. So
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's got to be a wake-up
You don't want
call.
this to happen in 7. You don't want this to happen Game 7.
Absolutely.
And I touched on it a few times on the live stream. It's like maybe, well, honestly, it's going back to my original point. It's like maybe the Avs just got a little bit too cocky. They just, especially coming off back-to-back 7-1 wins, they probably felt all like high and mighty, like
you're right.
we're gonna
Especially-
roll the rest of this playoffs. We're gonna win the Stanley Cup like with the, like with no difficulty at all. But then it's like, oh wait, there are other NHL teams on the other side of the ice, and the Dallas Stars play a very structured game, and there's a reason that they're in the position that they are right now.
Right,
And
maybe
I think
that's just oh, go ahead, Billy. Sorry.
I think. Oh, okay. I think Marshall, you're right on there. It's win 2 games 7-1, and it's pretty easy to get a little bit ahead of yourself and say, we're rolling. Especially going into a game against the Dallas team that you're more talented than Dallas. I don't think there's much debate about that. Colorado's definitely more talented, but Dallas also is in Arizona. They're pretty talented, and they're a very, very strong team, and especially the way they played today with their top line kicking. They are a legitimate playoff team, unlike Arizona. So we didn't take the it didn't look like the boys took them seriously heading into the game, and that's the result you get when that happens.
The thing is we are now in the final 8 of the entire NHL. Any one of these teams that have made it this far have a legitimate like chance at winning the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
And the thing is like the Avs and honestly like just the national media in general, including us, have just totally like swept Dallas under the rug. But in my opinion, I don't think that the regular season record for the Avs against Dallas is anything to like absolutely dismiss because we literally saw what Dallas was doing in the regular season tonight. We cannot be chasing this team from behind, and that's what we did in the regular season, and that's what we were doing tonight. If we continue to fall in this trend, going down 1-0 early, and try to chase, continue to chase, come back and come back, this is not looking good for the Avs, but I don't think that's going to continue to be the trend.
I don't either. And I guess I just wanted to ask a question to you guys. Do you think, and I know we had a second round exit last year, do you think maybe this could be a little bit of inexperience, maybe, some young guys not knowing quite how to win in the playoffs yet? I believe Cole's really our only Stanley Cup champion on the team right now.
No,
There's
we've got
probably
a
a couple
couple.
others.
We've got
Yeah,
Grubauer, we've got Burakovsky.
yeah, Gruby, that's right.
Donskoy and Nieto have both been in a Stanley Cup final.
Mm-hmm.
We've got. I don't think so. I think that
Okay.
we've got quite a bit of playoff experience. I think that you would like to have a little bit more of. I mean, eventually you have to make the first cup run, right?
Yeah.
You can't. You have to win the first one sometime, and I think this is the year. Last year was the first time that Avs legitimately went deep into the playoffs, into the conference final, like you touched on, or sorry, the conference semifinal. But this year, I think the expectation going into this playoffs was conference final, or it's not necessarily a failure, but it's a disappointment if the Avs weren't in the conference final this year. But
Yes.
I would agree with
back
that.
to the experience, I wouldn't say we're the most experienced team, but I wouldn't exactly call us an inexperienced team at this point. I think we're pretty average as far as experience goes on when you're comparing to some of the other teams around the league that are still in the game.
I mean, Dallas.
Right.
Dallas is one example. It's like they really haven't necessarily made most of their key players haven't necessarily made a deep run. So,
Right.
if we're talking specifically about this series, then experience shouldn't play too much of a huge factor. So, I mean, in the end, the Avs just did not look ready to play.
They didn't.
Bednar's quote of half of us didn't show up to the hockey game tonight. I mean, I'm obviously like playing words there. I don't remember the exact quote, but that's like what he said, pretty much. And then that's true though. That's what I saw watching the Avalanche tonight. There were some players that looked ready to play, but then you can't have that if you're trying to make a Stanley Cup run. You need the entire team committed. You need the entire team skating, and that just didn't happen. Hopefully Bednar gets all the boys in shape and the leadership truly like comes into fold here because Dallas is a good team. We have like written them off some. I do think that they aren't as on the level of the Avalanche, but the thing is it's NHL hockey, playoff hockey, and really anything can happen. The team that wants it the most is more times than not gonna win the series.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Dallas came out firing today. We didn't, and against we are, I believe, the better team, but the gap is not big enough for us to win when we're not playing our game, and they are. So that's you hate to drop game one. But I mean, you guys both said it earlier. I'm glad this happened in game one and not game seven. I do think this is a wake up call, and I think you roll out Monday and you might see a first period from the Avs to remember, which I certainly hope. I think that they bounce back pretty well. I think they take game two, and I think I think there's a chance they do it in fairly decisive fashion.
I
So
definitely think there's a chance.
I just want to pose another question real quick about going into game two. Um, I just want to get you guys' takes on just your confidence in Frankie compared to Grubauer coming into the series. Um, it's going to be interesting to see him, get his time in the net.
It's I feel I've never been more happy to have Frankie on the roster than I am today,
Yes.
with just the ability to have him in the net. But that said, I think we're going to miss Gru to an extent, especially. I mean, we've talked about it before. The biggest weakness that Frankie does have is sometimes that rebound control. Even the goal today wasn't his fault, but it was on a rebound. I would be a little slightly more concerned, particularly with a team like Dallas that can score. I mean, they don't score a ton of goals, but when they do, it's a lot of those dirty area ones. So it's something to watch out for. But like I said, I'm still confident in Frankie, and never been happier to have him on the roster because I think he'll be big for us.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Billy. My answer to that question, Zach, is I feel less confident in the Avs making a deep playoff run. But with that being said, I do still feel confident about them making a playoff run.
Hmm.
It's just not the same extent with Grubauer and net. This is not a situation in which, like, oh my goodness, the playoffs are over. Like, we
Right.
should just pack our bags and go home right now. Frankie is a very solid goaltender. He's proven in the regular season that he's a legitimate like goaltender or NHL goalie, and I feel like he has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder that he believes in himself to be like one of the like actual like first like go-to starter goaltenders in the league, and I think we're going to see a little bit of that from Frankie in the rest of the playoffs. But he has to be our guy. He has to like go out there and just prove that the regular season stats that he put up, the regular season success that he put up, was not a fluke.
Hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. I'm also confident with Grubauer and net. Obviously a fully healthy team. Avalanche are a Stanley Cup contender to me. Grubauer going out not necessarily takes him off that pedestal, but I'm more like, okay, if they lose in the conference finals to Vegas, then injury bug got us. We'll be back. But I'm not too worried about it. I have confidence in Frankie. I think he's a really capable goaltender. And I guess another question about Game Two, um, pending Eric Johnson's status. I think me and Billy talked about this a little bit on the live show about Timmins coming in, and I guess I wanted to get your take on that too, Marshall. What do you think happens there?
Do you think it's Timmons or Barbs or Connaughton even?
Yeah.
Honestly, for me, I think you got to go with the veteran experience. So I think it's going to be Bars or Connaughton.
Hmm.
Although I would like to see, like from a fan's perspective, I would like to see Timmins come in. But if you're in a series down 1-0, you got to kind of rely on like the more proven players, the more proven NHL players that you kind of know what you're going to get from them. If you're inserting Timmins into the lineup, it's a bit of a mystery. You don't know if you're going to get like just a total rookie or if you're going to get like Cale Makar from last season's playoffs. So that's a little bit of like the scare for me. I think you kind of got to go with the more proven players, and so that's why I would personally insert Barbario or Connaughton. But from a fan's perspective, if this was like the regular season and we weren't down 1-0 in the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, then sure, I would love Timmins to come in.
See, for me, I think my thought process is a little bit different on this one. I definitely agree that it's the safer move to go with Barbario or Connaughton, and there's a very good chance they do just play it safe. but I think there's something to be said for trying to drive that spark. You put in a young guy, a good puck moving defenseman like Timmins, and see if maybe it can spark something that way. Particularly, in this next game, you don't necessarily have to play him a ton. You can give him sheltered minutes, give him 7, 8 minutes in the game at even strength. Just bump up McCarr's minutes really to take it up, bump up Gerard's minutes to kind of fill up EJ, but give him maybe a little piece of that role and see if he earns a little bit more. See if he provides that little bit of a spark for you. If they put Connor Timmins in tomorrow and he scores a goal, they're winning that game. I'll tell you that right now. So
Yeah.
it's definitely a little bit of a more high risk move, but it's one that I'd strongly be considering. But like you said, Marshall, I think at the end of the day, the Avs coaching staff, the way they've proven, what they've shown is that they will likely lean on the veteran guy if they have to.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, let's just hope that EJ's injury is not like that freaking serious. Like he
Exactly.
went out of the game twice and came back into the game twice. So who knows what's going on there? But hopefully it's not so serious. Maybe it's just like a stinger or Charlie horse on the leg that was just like really painful. Because honestly, after the first time that he came back, he was looking like he was skating pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So hopefully it's nothing too serious. He did come back both times that he went out. So, EJ not only does he provide just that veteran defensive style of game, but he also provides a bunch of leadership for the Avalanche. Like we were talking about it, he's the longest tenured Avalanche, and there's no one to me outside of maybe Landy that represents just the culture of the Avalanche more than EJ. He's been through all these players being drafted. He's been through the 16-17 absolute abysmal season, and he's just been through the ups and downs and the revival of the Avalanche. So I want to see EJ back in the lineup, and I just hope it's not serious because, in my opinion, if EJ's out of the lineup, then that's a pretty big blow, an underrated blow.
That's a massive hit, especially the way he's been playing in this playoffs. He's a guy that often gets criticized, and this is an issue I sometimes have with fans in the NHL in general. It's just sometimes we see a bad contract and forget that that's still a good player. EJ's contract.
Yeah.
EJ obviously not worth his contract. Still a very good player. The example I like to compare it to is Jonathan Toews. Jonathan Toews is not worth his contract. He's making $10 million this year. But no one's questioning that he's a very good NHL player. And we extend that luxury to a star player who maybe is on a little bit too much of a contract. But sometimes we don't tend to extend that same kind of trust to a good NHL player who's on a great NHL player kind of contract. And I think that's why EJ sometimes gets a little bit of flack from segments of the fan base that like to say that, oh, he's just washed up, and no, he's not the same guy that he used to be. He's not the same guy that he could have been without all the injuries, the reason he went number one overall, but he is a very, very valuable member of this team. I think he's the third best defenseman on the roster, and I don't think it's really all that close. So he's a great guy to have.
Yeah,
there's a reason he wears that A.
Yeah, he's a leader on the team for sure. And he's been a leader for a long time. And I've said this in the past before pods. He's been snake bitten a bunch of times in the playoffs. He hasn't been able to be here a lot. And it'd be really unfortunate for him to get injured here. And also, I've also touched on this. We've seen Erik Johnson at his best, 40 games played, 12 goals, 10 assists, doing really, really well. And I think that's definitely an underrated part to his game is his offense. Even though it's kind of been, off and on throughout his career, he can put the puck in the net, and that's very valuable for the Avalanche because he's, like you said, Marshall, underrated. And if we lose Johnson, it would be bad for both our offense and our defense, in my opinion.
Yeah, and just the camaraderie, just the leadership in the locker room. Although he'll still be around and all that, but
it's just not the same.
Calvert's
I'm
another
hopeful
guy,
that he's
though.
back. Yeah,
Yes.
Calvert's another guy that was out. I'm hopeful that we have EJ back. There's just nothing to go on with Calvert. It wasn't clear when he got hurt. It wasn't until today that we knew he was hurt. So if if he's not back soon, I mean, we watched the fourth line today. We talked in our live stream. We were constantly talking about just what the fourth line lost, because that was in the Arizona series. That fourth line was dominant. They were driving. They were creating pressure for the first line to abuse constantly. And
Yeah.
today, they weren't doing that. Nemesnikov, a better player than Calvert, I would say, as far as skill is concerned and talent, but uh, the fourth line is worse with Nemesnikov in there instead of Calvert,
Yep,
and that was absolutely what we saw.
absolutely. But in the end of the day, there's a reason that we play a 7-game series. So you really just have to move on from this one. Hopefully, like you guys have said, this is just a little bit of a wake up call. This is not the same team as Arizona, and we bounce back, because
Yeah.
this team was looking as dominant as ever in that Arizona series. And Billy, going back to that first point that you made, it's like after the game that we lost against Arizona, game 3, um, it's like I said on our podcast, I feel more comfortable about the Avs in this series than I did after game 2, when we were like kind of just grinding that one out. And I don't really feel the same way right now, with this loss. The Stars absolutely outplayed us all night, all 3 periods. They won the period, in my opinion.
Mhm.
And that wasn't consistent with that game in Arizona. I felt very confident about the Avs. We knew that Darcy Kemper was going to steal a game, and he absolutely did. But with this game, the Stars were the better team. So the Avalanche have to figure something out here.
Yeah, this is a loss that stings. And I mean, let's just talk about the Stars for a minute, because the Stars, we knew all year, were a talented team that for some reason weren't clicking. And today, that top line clicked, and that is what is scary to me, because with Sagan, Ben, and Radulov playing the way they were in the regular season and playing the way they were really throughout the playoffs so far, they weren't a real threat for the cup. Anything could happen and they could win the cup, but they weren't a real threat in the same way that Tampa, Boston, Vegas, Colorado even were. But with that line clicking the way they did tonight, Tyler Sagan put one in, had a few assists. Jamie Benn had a few assists. Radulov scored a couple goals. That is a massive game changer, and this suddenly becomes. This is not only no longer a series where the Avs would be pretty heavily favored. This is now a series where you're talking about two pretty even teams, and two pretty even teams where the Avs are already starting down a game. So
Yep.
they need to find a way to counter that. My question to you guys: do you put any thought to? I mean, Bednar's not a guy that has historically matched lines a ton, but if you need to slow down that line, do you think about putting Burakovsky in Landeskog's spot, moving Nichushkin back up with Kadri and Landeskog like they were a little bit early on, and saying, I don't know what else we're going to do in this game. We might sacrifice a little bit of offense on the McKinnon line, but we are shutting down the Sagan, Radulov, Ben line, because you got to stop it somehow. Is that an option? Is that one of the ways that you think about going about it?
I would say yes, but it's going to take, another game of them performing like that, or at least,
Yeah.
it might be like a live, adjustment by Bednar in like the second or something like that. But just throughout the round robin tournament and their first series, those two guys have not been performing. And I believe the Avs team defense is just going to it's going to lock them down eventually. Obviously, these are two really good players in Tyler Sagan and Jamie Benn, and even Alex Radulov. They're going to get their chances, just like McKinnon, Rantanen, and Landeskog are. You can only contain them. So, but I think the Avs are going to do a better job than that than what the Stars are going to do to us.
Yeah, definitely. I think your first point is dead on. They just before we change lines to match them, they definitely need to prove it's not a flash in the pan. What were you saying, Marshall?
Oh, I was just saying, like, Billy, we have been saying, like, this entire season, Bednar is an underrated coach in this league and really deserves a Jack Adams nomination. And with the first series, he really didn't even need to coach that like crazy. But in this series, I kind of think it's going to be a little bit of a chess and checkers kind of matchup. So any type of line combinations that Bednar decides to roll with, I think is going to be due or for good cause. So I could definitely see that lineup, that true shutdown second line, coming back together. But
Yeah.
I do agree with your guys' point. It's like it's going to take just a little bit more. Like, hey, you guys got to prove it. That was a really good first game for you guys, but let's see if you can do it again.
Right.
You know,
And
type of
I
situation.
think you're right, Marshall. These two teams are pretty evenly matched at this point, and I think we got the advantage in coaching. And Bednar is going to have to, show his worth, and he's more than capable.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and I'm I mean, I'm very confident that we find a way to rebound in this series.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that I definitely think this is a series, and I would not have said that yesterday. So
Nope.
this is going to be a hard fought one. Which I mean, at the end of the day, assuming you win it, it's a good thing that it's hard fought because
Mhm.
you don't want to roll into the conference final against. I mean, I'm still penciling in Vegas. I mean, Vancouver could win it as well, but I'm penciling in Vegas, and you don't want to roll in against Vegas having just trounced two teams and
Mhm.
not really gotten better for it. So you got to face some adversity at some point. Today,
Yes.
today we did. Let's see how we respond.
Yep.
Yep. That's really what separates champions from just the rest of the pack. Just
Exactly.
how you face adversity, how you rebound from losses, and I still have confidence in the Avs with doing that. But Monday's game is a huge game. You do not want to go down 2-0.
Yeah.
Yeah, going down to nothing is it's not a death sentence, but it's you need to treat it like it is because
Right.
Yep.
it's about as close as you can get in two games. So you you definitely have to take Monday's game. We went a little longer than we had expected, but there's definitely a lot to talk about on this game. Before we
Mhm.
do get out of here, is there any other things you guys want to just touch on here?
Uh,
Um, really, like this. This is the first true game where I felt in the entire bubble situation that the Avs have been in. This is the first game that I feel like the Avs absolutely got totally outplayed.
Yeah, I agree with
And
that.
what we've been talking about, the Avs might have a little bit of just like, oh, this is like a walk in the park. And so hopefully, and I think Bednar and the leadership group is going to get this team in shape and be like, guys, there's another NHL hockey team on the other side of the bench. Another team that finished like fourth in the West for a reason. We have to come out there and prove that we're the better team. We're not just gonna
Yeah.
like just roll over this team. We have to play better hockey than that, and I think they're going to. Um, but yeah, like that's really all for me. Really bad hockey game from the Avs tonight, but I still have all the confidence in the world in this group.
yeah. I guess going into game two, this is my, last thought for the day. Who are your guys' game two X factors for the Avalanche? One of them's
Frankie.
got to be Frankie. Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
It's got to
I
be Frankie.
really think that is the only X factor that probably like. I mean, I guess there's definitely other X factors, but that like truly matters for the Avalanche
Mhm.
Cup chances because Grubauer leaving tonight was it took a shot on all of us. Like
Yeah.
we were all just like, oh no.
We spent the
You
rest
know.
of that period on the live stream just saying like not talking about anything else that was going on because
Yeah.
really it's one of those games where regardless of the result, the biggest thing that came out of it is that we lost our goalie. You know, win or
Yep.
lose, the biggest story is the Avalanche are now. I mean, we don't know. Maybe he'll be back in 3 days, and this is all for nothing.
Yeah.
But for now, the thought is that the Avalanche are a team that has to get through this on their back end. So that's
Yeah.
where we're at. It looks like we still got a few people left in the live stream, so while you're still here, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Check out our podcast wherever. We're all over the place now. You know, we're on iTunes, we're on Spotify, Google Play, iHeartRadio. We've actually been getting some traction on, so wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find us. And we'll see you in our next episode. All right, boys.